Hey everyone, today we're diving into another terrifying case. Please support my channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notifications. He was a successful and well-respected man with a life that always followed a clear plan, until she came along. Mysterious and half his age, with a dangerous past. What started out as a romance quickly turned into a series of unexplained events that led to inevitable tragedy. No one could have imagined that their innocent dates and lavish gifts would end in bloodshed, leaving behind countless unanswered questions. It all began when Mike New, a successful businessman from Pennsylvania, truly believed he was entering a new chapter in his life. At 60, he was convinced he'd found happiness when he met Jennifer Morris, a young and energetic single mom. Their relationship moved fast, and just a few months after they met, Mike invited Jennifer on a trip to the Caribbean. The romance was intense: jet ski rides, dinners at fancy restaurants, and lots of gifts. To his friends and family, he seemed like a completely different person. Jennifer had changed him that much. Back in 2015, 3 years into their relationship, Mike even got a tattoo in her honor. It was the first time he'd ever done something like that. That same year, he asked Jennifer to move in with him, and she agreed. They even set up a room just for her child. Everything seemed perfect. Mike took care of her every need and created a comfortable life for her and her kid. But long before Mike met Jennifer, his life was much quieter and more predictable. He was born in Pennsylvania in 1953 and grew up in a well-respected family. After high school and college, he married his high school sweetheart, and they lived in a nice house by the beach. Together, they raised their kids and lived the typical middle-class life. But after a few years, the spark faded, and the couple decided to divorce. Despite the split, Mike and his ex-wife remained on good terms, and their kids spent a lot of time with both parents. After the divorce, Mike moved to a small town in Bucks County, starting a new chapter on his own. He threw himself into his work and became a successful pharmaceutical sales rep. His business thrived, and the house he bought by the river became his pride and joy. He spent his days riding jet skis, collecting art, and enjoying life. But all that calm came to an end in 2012 when Jennifer entered his life. Their relationship seemed passionate from the outside, but many suspected her interest in Mike was more about his money. Mike, however, seemed completely blinded by his feelings, and nothing could stop him. The real tragedy happened on the evening of August 8, 2017. Mike's coworkers became worried when he hadn't checked in all day, which was totally unlike him. They decided to go by his house to see if everything was okay. When they got there, they found Mike's car parked in the garage, but the house was quiet and locked up. The women knocked on the door, but no one answered. Their sense of unease grew when they noticed the front door was actually unlocked. They stepped inside. The house felt empty, almost abandoned. No one answered their calls, so they kept moving further into the house. What they found in the living room was horrifying. Mike was sitting in a chair, facing away from them, and at first, it looked like he had just fallen asleep. But as they got closer, they realized that wasn't the case. His face and chest were covered in blood, and his head was lifelessly tilted back. It was clear he was dead. The women immediately called the police. One of them was so shaken she couldn't even describe what had happened, so the other one took the phone and told them they had found Mike's body. When the crime scene investigators arrived, they quickly ruled out a heart attack. Mike had a bullet wound right between his eyes, indicating he'd been shot at close range. But there was no gun nearby, so the idea that Mike had taken his own life was out of the question. The house wasn't trashed, and there were no signs of a struggle, which suggested that Mike hadn't seen the attack coming. But the strangest part was that, while his pockets had been emptied and his watch was missing, more valuable items, like his art collection, were untouched. This led the police to believe the robbery had been staged. As they began piecing together the timeline of events, It became clear that Mike's relationship with Jennifer played a key role in his tragic fate. The investigation then dug deeper into Mike's life. He owned 2 guns, but one of them was missing. It turned out Mike had been shot with his own gun, which he kept for self-defense. The killer clearly knew where the gun was kept and how to get in and out of the house without being seen. This led the police to suspect that the perpetrator was someone close to Mike. Then, Jennifer Morris came into the picture. Her past had its fair share of dark moments. She grew up in a tough family, left home at an early age, and had to support herself by working as a mechanic. Her love for speed and thrill shaped her life. Late-night street races, risky stunts, it was all part of her image. Her body was covered in tattoos, showing off her bold, free-spirited nature. Even though she became a mom at 20, her life didn't slow down. The biological father of her child left them early on, and Jennifer had to fight for her future on her own. Mike met Jennifer in 2012 when she was 28. Their romance kicked off with a bang. Lavish gifts, trips, and lots of attention drew her in, while Mike seemed completely head over heels in love. But as their relationship deepened, tension started to build. Neighbors recalled hearing arguments between the two in the months leading up to the tragedy. Still, they continued living together even as things got worse. When Mike was found dead, Jennifer had vanished. The neighbors hadn't seen her for a few days, which raised suspicions. As the police gathered information, they learned that Jennifer had a troubled past, especially with her mother. She often talked about her rough childhood, blaming men who had abused her and a mother who didn't believe her. As the investigation unfolded, more and more evidence pointed to the idea that Mike had trusted his killer. Whoever did it knew the house well and had no problem getting in without breaking anything. Jennifer, who had been his lover, became the prime suspect. Pennsylvania, 2012. A hot evening at a men's club, where the crowd was having a good time, turned out to be life-changing for both Jennifer Morris and Mike New. Jennifer, a young and striking dancer, had just started working at the club to make ends meet. Life hadn't been kind to her. A mechanic by trade, a single mom, she was in serious financial trouble, with a $1,200 electric bill hanging over her like a dark cloud. It was in this state that she met 59-year-old Mike, a regular at the club. Their conversation quickly became something more when Mike offered to help her out. Jennifer agreed to go on a date if Mike paid off her bill, and that was the start of their whirlwind romance. What started as a simple deal soon turned into something more serious. Mike showered his young lover with extravagant gifts, jewelry, a motorcycle, a car, everything to show her place in his life. They traveled together, dined at the most expensive restaurants, and hit the hottest nightclubs. Jennifer started calling him her sugar daddy, and Mike didn't seem to mind. Her life, once filled with struggle, finally seemed easy and comfortable. Mike found in her what he didn't even realize he was missing: youth, passion, and a wild kind of energy. He was a respected businessman, successful in the pharmaceutical industry, and used to achieving his goals. She, on the other hand, was looking for a way out of her tough life and found security in his wealth and stability. By 2015, their relationship took a serious turn when Jennifer moved in with Mike, and from the outside, they seemed happy together. Their whirlwind romance, full of expensive trips and lavish gifts, made others envious, but no one suspected the deep conflict brewing beneath the surface. Neighbors recalled that just months before Mike's death, things between them had gotten worse. They argued frequently, and one fight supposedly ended with Jennifer leaving the house. But despite that, she came back, and they continued living together. Then on August 8th, 2017, everything changed. Mike was found dead in his home. The investigation began, and soon enough, the police turned their attention to Jennifer. After Mike's death, she had suddenly disappeared. No one had seen her for days, which raised suspicions. Mike's kids, Patrick and his sister, were shocked by their father's death. They traveled from different cities to get to the bottom of what had happened. Patrick, in particular, had always been against his father's relationship with Jennifer. He saw her as materialistic and dangerous. Patrick remembered how Mike refused to attend his wedding in 2016 just because Patrick didn't want Jennifer there. This caused a major rift between father and son. In recent years, everyone around Mike had noticed that Jennifer was abusing drugs and manipulating him. Many believed she was only using him for her own gain, which severely damaged Mike's relationships with his loved ones. The constant conflicts with Patrick were a direct result of Jennifer's influence over his dad. When Mike made Jennifer his heir and the beneficiary of life insurance policies worth $500,000, it only reinforced the idea that she was after his money. By 2017, everything had come to a tragic end. Jennifer began distancing herself from Mike, showing up less and less, and their relationship was falling apart. Detectives were convinced that money could have been her motive, especially since Mike had recently told people he was planning to break things off with her and call off their wedding. Jennifer Morris had been pulling away from Mike, and by 2017, their relationship had seriously deteriorated. She would disappear for entire nights, returning early in the morning without offering any explanations, acting like she didn't care how it affected their life together. Mike noticed her becoming more distant, and as their relationship grew colder, Jennifer seemed to be sinking deeper into a dark place. Her drug addiction was becoming more and more obvious. At some point, her addiction took over, and it was the beginning of the end for her. She had been arrested a few times for drug possession, and once, a year before the tragic events, she even hit a cyclist with her car. Despite all these issues, Mike never turned his back on Jennifer. Not only did he pay her fines and legal fees, but he also made monthly payments for her ongoing cases, spending around $4,000. Mike wanted to help Jennifer even though his family, including his kids, didn't share his optimism. According to them, just a few days before his death, Mike mentioned he was planning to end things with Jennifer for good. He intended to call off the wedding, which for her would mean losing everything: his house, financial support, and the privileges she'd gotten used to. Patrick and Katie, Mike's children, were convinced that Jennifer's fear of losing access to Mike's wealth and opportunities pushed her to commit the crime. Once she realized she was about to lose it all, she couldn't hold back her emotions and lost control. Mike died within 48 hours before his co-workers found him. He was shot in the face at point-blank range, and the bullet split into two, with one piece hitting his brain, causing instant death. The police put all their efforts into finding Jennifer. They knew she was on probation from the accident, and they were sure she would show up to check in at the police station. 4 days after the crime, she did show up, completely unaware of what was waiting for her. Jennifer acted as if nothing had happened, came to pay her legal fees, and claimed she was shocked to hear about Mike's death, which she said she found out about on the news. However, the detectives noticed something odd. The news about the crime had spread immediately after it happened, but Jennifer had waited a few days before coming to the police. When detectives set up a meeting with her for the next day to ask more questions about Mike, Jennifer suddenly disappeared. This only raised more suspicion, and her sudden disappearance seemed like an attempt to run or buy time to come up with an alibi. However, she couldn't just vanish for good, as she was still required to check in regularly with the police. Meanwhile, the officers continued gathering evidence and talking to people in Mike's circle to build a case against her. During the investigation, some alarming facts came to light. A friend of Mike's revealed that shortly before his death, the businessman had confided in him about fearing for his life. Mike had discovered that Jennifer had a new boyfriend, a man known in criminal circles by the alias Ruthless. Mike knew, becoming more aware of the danger his relationship was spiraling into, tried to find a way out of the situation. Just days before his death, Mike uncovered the identity of Jennifer's new man, someone everyone knew as Ruthless. His real name was Charles Kula, and he had a bad reputation in the criminal world. He had faced the law many times and was involved in serious crimes, including drug trafficking. Not long after being released from prison, Charles entered Jennifer's life, and she quickly moved in with him. However, her belongings were still at Mike's house, adding tension to their already strained relationship. Mike had warned Jennifer several times that if she didn't come to get her things, he would put them in storage. But he was careful not to provoke Charles, knowing he didn't stand a chance against someone with such a dangerous past. Jennifer and Charles weren't even trying to hide their relationship. They announced their engagement on social media, which only made Mike more upset. The police could see the situation escalating. They started suspecting that Charles might have been the mastermind behind Mike's murder. One theory was that Jennifer's new boyfriend could have come to Mike's house with her, leading to a confrontation between the two men. Or it could have been a cold-blooded crime, with robbery as the motive, where Mike was just an obstacle that needed to be eliminated. When Jennifer failed to show up for her probation check-in, the police decided to arrest her. On August 25, 2017, officers went to the motorcycle repair shop where Jennifer worked and arrested her for violating her probation. This gave investigators the chance to dig deeper into her possible involvement in the crime. While Jennifer was in custody, one of her cellmates came forward, claiming Jennifer had confessed to the crime. During questioning, Jennifer refused to answer any questions and immediately hired a lawyer. Investigators decided to focus on gathering more evidence. They obtained a warrant to access communications between Jennifer and Mike. After reviewing their messages, the police found that Mike had been scared. In one text, he warned Jennifer that anyone who came into his house would get what they deserved. It seemed like a clear threat, a desperate attempt to protect his life. Jennifer's phone was tracked near Mike's house at 9:45 p.m. the night before the incident, proving she was at the scene of the crime. After that, her phone moved to Charles's trailer where she arrived around 11 p.m. Interestingly, Mike's phone stopped working after 3 a.m., which likely means it was thrown into the water. A tech expert confirmed that Jennifer's phone automatically connected to Mike's Wi-Fi at the time of the crime, meaning she was close enough to the router. Soon after, police were able to unlock Mike's phone, which Jennifer had been using. They recovered messages where Mike hinted that he was planning to contact the FBI to get Charles sent back to prison. Investigators believed that Charles couldn't let that happen, and Mike's decision might have been the trigger for the crime. They also checked Jennifer's messages with Charles. While the threats didn't seem to bother Charles much, Jennifer reacted aggressively. The last message Mike sent Jennifer before he died was, "I love you." She didn't respond. When police gained access to Jennifer's social media, the story became even more confusing. Right after Mike's death, she started messaging her friends and acquaintances, but her stories didn't add up. To some, she said her ex-boyfriend was brutally murdered. To others, she claimed he took his own life. To a third group, she insisted she hadn't spoken to him in a while and knew nothing about the tragedy. This inconsistency only deepened the investigators' suspicions, as it became clear Jennifer was trying to mislead everyone. Realizing Jennifer was hiding the truth, police decided to question her new boyfriend, Charles. Surprisingly, he confessed that he had nothing to do with Mike's death and blamed Jennifer for everything. According to Charles, she came home that night and admitted there had been a fight between her and Mike. Allegedly, Mike came out with a gun and tried to threaten her, but she grabbed the gun in self-defense. The gun accidentally went off, hitting Mike in the face. Jennifer panicked and ran out of the house without checking if he was still alive. The next day, Jennifer decided to go back to make sure Mike was really dead. However, Charles didn't want to take any chances and asked his friend Jerry to drive her to the scene. Jerry agreed, not knowing what was really going on. When they arrived at the house, Jerry noticed that Jennifer didn't even check if Mike was breathing. Instead, she started gathering his belongings, his watch, laptop, and phone. She destroyed the evidence by throwing Mike's phone into the river, then returned to Charles's place. Later, Jerry told the police about this trip, and his statement became key evidence in the case. As the investigation progressed, the evidence started to come together. DNA from Jennifer was found on Mike's pockets, confirming she was at the crime scene. But Charles wasn't completely off the hook either. He told the police that he couldn't have been involved in the crime because he had recently been in a serious accident and was confined to a wheelchair. Investigators checked his story and confirmed it was true. Charles was indeed injured and physically unable to be there at the time. However, on September 29, 2017, Jennifer Morris was charged with first-degree murder, robbery, and destruction of evidence. The trial was set for January 2019. Prosecutors presented strong evidence showing that Jennifer was willing to do anything for money and a comfortable life. She knew Mike was planning to cut off her financial support, and she stood to lose all the perks he provided. Mike's threats to go to the FBI and get Charles locked up again were the final straw for Jennifer. At the trial, Jerry became the key witness, confirming that he helped Jennifer return to the crime scene and saw her trying to cover her tracks. Because of his testimony, Jerry wasn't charged, even though he knew about the crime. Charles also avoided charges by cooperating with the police, despite the fact that he melted down the murder weapon and failed to report the incident right away. Jennifer's defense team tried to argue that she wasn't capable of committing such a brutal crime, claiming she had no history of violence or aggression. Jennifer even took the stand herself, saying she went to Mike's house to collect her things, but he confronted her with a gun. She claimed they struggled, and the gun went off accidentally. But the self-defense argument didn't hold up. Forensic experts proved that the shot was fired at close range, straight into Mike's face, showing it was an execution, not an accident. There were also no signs of a struggle in the house. On February 1st, 2019, the jury delivered their final verdict. Jennifer Morris was found guilty on all counts: murder, theft, and destruction of evidence. Her fate was sealed, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Throughout the trial, she remained calm, never showing any sign of remorse or regret. For her, it was a lost game, but one where she had tried to deceive and confuse the investigation until the very end. The sentencing was the final blow to Mike's already broken family. In the courtroom, his son Patrick said that the verdict wouldn't bring back the father he lost, both physically and emotionally, long before the crime. While he was still alive, Mike had distanced himself from his son and daughter, captivated by his relationship with Jennifer, which caused a deep rift in their family. Patrick often emphasized that Jennifer, more than anyone else, had destroyed his life, not only by taking his father from him, but also by severing the family bond that might have been repaired if not for the tragic events. Mike died alone, betrayed by someone he trusted, but his legacy didn't end there. After the sentencing, the family hoped that, despite everything, they could find some comfort in knowing that justice had been served. This tragedy shows just how easily manipulation and false promises can tear a person's life apart, no matter how successful or wise they may be. In the end, Mike paid the ultimate price for his naivety, trust, and blind love. Thanks for watching, guys! Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of shocking stories coming up.